Level Up Latina partners with working women and mamas alike to guide them in achieving fulfilling career and life goals through financial empowerment, professional or leadership coaching, and personal wellness. Find the unique coaching you need to succeed.
You're listening to Vero, Ceci, and Irene, and we are Level Up Latina. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Latina podcast. If you have not noticed, you are part of the summer series. This is episode 3 of the summer series. Today, we are going to be talking about family and just like resemblances. But before we do that, I want to say that if you have been listening to the summer series and you have a topic in particular you want us to discuss, feel free to shoot us an email or send it over on our messages, and we'll be happy to discuss anything short and brief for all you baby girls or chuladas or mujeronas poderosas. So, like I mentioned, today we are talking family resemblances and all that good stuff. But before we jump into that topic, I want to check in con mis mujeronas aquí, chulas. Irene y Ceci, ¿cómo se encuentran?
Good. Excited to be on the summer series. We have our additional co-hosts with the babies over there being super cute and cooing and kind. So if you listen this summer, you got your dose of baby fever, baby love. Don't get pregnant because Veto's over here influencing you. Like, keep it together if it's not the right time. But otherwise, the summer series, you might want to have a baby. There's so much baby love. Mm-hmm. How are you, Ceci?
I'm good. I'm a little sore. Mi espalda baja, speaking of being cuarentona and buenona. Pero bien aquí andamos. I haven't exercised. In the earlier episode, we were talking about like taking care of ourselves, doing this. I haven't done my little aceitito massage today, and I haven't done my little workout, but ahorita que terminamos me echo un little half hour a ver qué hago de ejercicio.
Nice. I hope you do. Ya hace un poquito de ejercicio por mí también, okay? Como últimamente I went to the doctor and they're like, you lost 9 pounds. I was like, how? And then I shared it with my cuñada and she's like, stress.
Running after your kids.
Stress, you know? But running
the kids.
Well, running after the kids. It's like, no paramos para nada, you know? So it's pretty crazy. But please exercise a little bit. Drink some water de limón por mí también. And I'm going back to drinking a lot of water. I've noticed that I've been getting a lot of like back pain, but I think it's my riñones. So I've been drinking my water también. All of that plays a role. But today I wanted to kind of talk about family resemblances because I just, you know, as you guys know, my mom helps me a lot with watching the kids and taking care of them. Or when I'm trying to podcast or I'm coaching, you know, my mom helps me like just watch them for those few hours. I mean, it's a lot of work, but you know, me ayuda con eso. But my mom's been around me a lot, and I'm starting to notice that I do things like my mother, even though we are very different. I am like, we are so alike. And there's parts of it that I love. There's parts of it I'm like, mi mamá no deja cosas para mañana. Si se pueden hacer ahorita, she's just like, lo voy a hacer. But there comes a point in your life where I'm like, señora, you're 77. Like, you need to slow your roll and get some rest. Like, your blood pressure is going through the roof and you're exhausted and your feet are swelling. Like, I don't want to be that. I want to be able to get things done, but know how to have the balance of taking care of myself, listening to my body. So I feel that recently, I am so much more like my mom. So the conversation or the question I have for you, two women, chingonas, who do you think that you are most like in your family? And is it a good thing? Do you agree with it? How does it sit with you? And would your family agree with what you think? Or do they think you're like somebody else? A ver, empieza Ceci. Te estás pensando mucho. A ver, tú empieza.
Physically, I'm like my dad. So siempre me han dicho que I might look like my dad, that my eyes are small like my dad, y no sé qué tanto. Sometimes Lisa me queda viendo y le hace, hi, suegro, you know. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you look like your dad. Especially cuando no estás pintada, you know. I'm like, okay. So physically, like my dad. Certain characteristics that I've noticed of myself, especially when I'm like, you know, reprimanding las niñas or whatever, it's like definitely my mom, because my mom siempre fue like la más regañona, the one that we had to like, you know, a la que le tenemos miedo essentially with my siblings, and I like, Dios, my mom. So I've noticed that I'm that like to my kids, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. Like, el modo como que les grito, just like certain sayings que me salen, and we've talked about this. I'm like, oh my God, we're saying like repeating the things that our mom said, but certain things that I've noticed, and then I catch myself like, okay, maybe that wasn't, you know, good thing, or maybe I don't know, maybe I don't like that. So from that, I tried to change and be a different kind of mom, like we've talked about this, like my mom, like not being cariñosa with me or my sister, but she was with my little brother. Well, he's not little anymore, but you know, when he was little, just like lo chiquiaba más, and a nosotras no. So I try to be cariñosa and like hugging my daughters constantly because I don't know, I just felt like, and I know I was fine. I was like, no tengo traumas, creo que de eso, but maybe that might not be the case for my sister, and I feel like that's what I'm trying to do. También en lo sociable, I think I'm more like my mom because my mom's super social, super chatty Kathy, super chatty Cata, Doña Cata. And my dad's más calladito and reserved y hombre de pocas palabras, where I was like that in my younger years when I was younger. I guess I was shy and I was an introvert, but as I've grown and become older, I become more like my mom. I'm definitely more social, platico más. So I would say, yo creo a good balance de los dos, but as far as parenting goes, I'm trying to be a different kind of parent.
Good job, Sissy. I'd say for me, I think a lot of us, because we grew up watching our parents like reprimand us, like we definitely get our reprimanding side from our mom. So for sure, like I'm like my mom when I reprimand. My sister was really like my second mom, and she was intense, and she was, you know, raised by my dad more than I was, 18 years older than me. So imagine like being 20 and having this 2-year-old around, and being 22 and having a 4-year-old around. Like she is really the one that I would say disciplined me a lot. Like she would be the one que me daba mis nalgadas, que me gritaba. So it's a weird, interesting, like, though my mom was kind of like the nag, and I'll nag at the kids the way she did. Like if I'm really, really upset, or like, and luckily I don't do it as much anymore, but when they were little, if I was like having my own tantrum, it reminds me of my sister's tantrum, right? Like if I was that kind of like, losing it, and you're gonna be like, calm down. And that's exactly how my sister would be with me when we were growing up. Like the little, you know, just not patient. And I'm sure it's because my dad did it to her, you know. I'd say I'm like her in that respect. And it's sad that we think about the negatives. So my sister's also really lovely and wonderful and super mom. And there's all these great things I'm sure I get from her. But I can think of the regaños being like hers. My social side, I always feel comes from my dad. But as of late, I'm like, shit, no, my mom is like chatty Ines. That doesn't rhyme. But you know what I mean? Like, dude, my mom, like, she doesn't listen because she talks so much. So I'm trying to be conscientious of like, conversations are a two-way street. But yeah, she'll talk to anybody about anything. So I guess I get my social side from both of them. My dad was very funny, very charismatic. He'd like to crack a joke. He liked to have people love him. And so I think that from a young age, my siblings that were social got that from him. So I got that from them. My middle brother, who's kind of the black sheep of the family because he kind of grew up on his own. There were the bunch at the top that grew up together and the two at the bottom that grew up together. He's the random one in the middle. He was so social and different and like out there. And I think as a middle child, he wanted to be different, and he almost like looked different than the rest of us. A lot of us look like my dad, and he looks like my mom's side of the family. I think I get a lot of my socialness from him, who again got it from my dad. So I can see characteristics in me that come from different siblings, from my parents. And I'm super duper duper grateful that both my parents are social in their way. I'm so grateful that like they gave me that, and that as the baby of the family, I think we work even harder to be like the clown and to be funny and to, you know, just to be the center of attention as the baby, you know. So them being social combined with my birth order, I think really helped me be social and talkative and like people and want to network. I got it from, siblings, parents, and that's pretty much it, obviously. If those were the only people in my family that I would compare myself to. And then when I think of my nieces and nephews, we're all cut from the same cloth because they're all the same when it comes to like just being social, but also being like chismositos, chismositas, like gossip and getting together and stirring the shit pot. Like we all kind of have that. And we always say it's like a Sanchez thing. It's like a Sanchez thing. So poor Sanchez is like, we're kind of known for also being how we are. Lleva y trae, like my mom says. In fact, the other day, my mom was so funny. I love my mom. I love her so much. She's just so funny. But she's like, mija, you already know, right? Like, what? Ya sabes, yo sé que sabes, yo sé que ya sabes. And Diego's like, oh, your mom must have just been tasting glory. When you know you're going to tell someone something for the first time, you're going to bring the chisme. Ya sabes, ya te dijeron. Yo allí en cuando estábamos ahí en Tapia, para el Easter, yo vi que, I'm like, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Tú ya sabes, ya te dijeron, ya sabes lo reciente. I'm like, what? Like, spit that shit out. I was saying that, like, Mom, no sabes de lo que me está hablando. Ya te dijo Gina, ¿no? And I'm like, no, what? I'm like, this is getting good. She's just like dropping the little gems. I'm like, this is so Sanchez of us. And she's like, like, so-and-so's pregnant. I'm like, really? And it's like my niece, my little niece, who's not married. So my mom's like, ¿por qué no se cuidó? ¿Por qué no se cuidó? You know, da, 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 da. And then she was telling me that my brother told her and all this stuff. And I'm like, my family were so funny like that. My mom couldn't wait to tell me, y'all. She couldn't wait to tell me. She's like, you don't know? You don't know. No sabes. Sí sabes. Ya te dijeron. ¿Cómo no sabes? Ya vas a saber. I'm like, dígame el chisme.
Yeah, ma, por favor.
I think I get that from the whole family. And it's something that I work on because I definitely don't want to be like the one that like, you heard it from me, you know, or I told you. So I really actually work on that. Like, I love that I'm the last to know. I love that I'm not repeating it. I'm trying to be better because like 10-year-old me and 15-year-old me was just like my mom. Girl, tell me you know. Girl, tell me do. I'm actually working on not being like a big old gossiper. And Sophie really taught me that in the last couple of years because Sophie in middle school and whatnot really talks about how it's toxic to talk about people behind their back and you shouldn't say that if they're not around to hear it. And I remember thinking when she was a 6th grader, like, man, those were all really great principles. And I'm like the opposite because I want to talk about people. So I've tried in the last 2 years to not be chismosita, but I definitely get it from the whole side of my mom's family because somos chismositos. I really put my family on blast. If they hear this episode, they're gonna take issue with me.
That's all good. It's con amor. It's nothing wrong. It's una cosa que you would be making up lies about them, and then they'll be like, why are you saying that stuff? That's so wrong. But cuando hay verdad, you know, and I don't think it's bad. I think it's just that están emocionados de la vida, lo que está pasando, and it's okay to share that, you know. It's another thing que ya te pases, you know.
Riendo con lo que tu mamá que ya le andaba.
Dude,
ya sabes, pero ya sabes.
I was telling Diego at church because they did like a long procession we went to a first communion for my nephew. So it took a while to get like that done. So estamos platicando, and it was a part of church where you can kind of talk. But it was so funny because the kid sitting between us was like, Mom, do you want to just sit next to Dad? And I'm like, oh my God, I never get to sit next to Dad next to church. Yes. I scoot over. And then the one over here to this side is like, why is she scooting over? I want to sit next to her. And Noah's all upset. Well, because she wants to sit with Dad for a change. And then Isaiah's like, what if I want to sit next to Mom? Before I know it, it's like Isaiah and Diego, and I'm chismeando with the both of them. And then Noah's in the corner like, I want to sit next to Mom. But then I was telling him, like, my mom could not wait to spill the beans. And she spilled like 3 different beans at that conversation. So, and she's like, y no sabes eso tampoco. I'm like, Mom, no. And I love that I don't know. I'm like, I'm so glad that I don't know like all these chismes because that means I have probably not been talking to her this week, so she hasn't told me. And then I go, la invito a comer. Sí, vamos, hija. And then she's all desperate to pay. I'm like, yo la invité. No, vinieron las dos. Yo las voy a llevar. And then, but she had already told me all the chismes, so we didn't even have much to talk about. But my mom loved the chisme train, man.
Since our moms just need someone to talk to, you know? They just need someone to talk to. For real. Okay, so I left off. So my uncle passed away recently, so a lot of my tios that came from Washington, they came for a wedding, but they extended their stay because they're like, we want to be able to see my mom, because my mom and my uncle were really, really close. So se quedaron mis tios, and they're like, oh, hay que hacer una carnita asada. So I'll come over here, and we had a carnita asada, and it was really, really nice. We drank like a bottle and a half of tequila, and just bonding, platicando. I don't see my tios often because they live a little far away. So as we're drinking and talking, my uncle goes to me, mi tío Adrián goes, oye, mija, ¿tú a quién sacaste en tu manera de pensar? Porque se me hace muy diferente. And I sat there and started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Shoot, no sé, ¿sabe qué, tío? Yo he sido más apegada a mis tíos. En el sentido, like, I've been very much, like, close to the men in our family. My uncles, my cousins, my male cousins. I've been close to my brother, my dad. And it's not just, you know, like observing their behaviors and being in conversations with them. Like, ¿sabe qué, tío? Se me hace que porque he sido más apegada a los hombres de nuestra familia, que he tal vez agarrado más esa mentalidad, like a dudish mentality. I'm like, nothing wrong with it. I'm like, but as I looked at my tías over there, I was like, and my mom, I'm like, the thing is that I'm also very strong like these women in our family. Even though they allow certain things to happen or they might not speak up, we have some very strong women in the family. And I think I got the best of both, le dije. Porque soy como ustedes, bien cabrona, así como los hombres, pero soy cabrona también como ellas, in a different kind of cabrona, right? And so he was just like looking at me like, mira nomás. Pues tienes razón. Sí tenemos unas viejas bien fuertonas, ¿verdad? Like, well, yeah, we do. They might not speak up like the dudes do, but they definitely run shit like you wouldn't think, right? So it really put me to think about that. But I've always felt, you girls knew this, like, it was not that it was hard for me to have female friends. I just didn't seek them often, even though I went to an all-girls school and I did have friends. I always gravitated to like having like the guy friends. Me gustaba tener my compadres, the homies, and I just felt like I had those cousins, or I had a piece of my brother there, or a piece of a tío there. But it wasn't because I didn't like to have female friendships. It was just a little harder to maintain because I always felt that it was a lot of drama with women. I was like, yo no quiero drama. And now, obviously, it's changed. It's definitely evolved from just only male friends to having more deeper relationships and friendships with women. But I think that it just took a while for me to be able to have those kind of friendships that were non-drama, that were very... And it also came from me, learning how to communicate, right? Like, it's not the same. You have to have awareness. You have to be, take it slow to be able to share what you think and all that. So I'm still a work in progress, but I feel like we definitely get influenced by the people we spend the time with. And I think when I was growing up, I really loved seeing, my tíos around con sus botas, sus sombreros, sus cintos, and like just seeing them be like dudes, así bien vaquerones, bien viejones, right? So it just trips me out that when I were at family gatherings, being able to see that, like, oh, that's where I get that from. Or, it's very like beautiful to see que it's in the gene pool, like Irene said, it's a Sanchez thing. It's like, for me, it's like, it's a Burgos thing, or it's a Renteria thing, because my mom Renteria. But sometimes we feel that we're more influenced from one side of the family than the other. When you get to see both perspectives, like, or both families, you're like, hijo de su madre, the gene definitely runs deep, like harsh, like, and it's not harsh, hard, like runs deep and hard, because there's so many similarities to these people that you're just around. But that was something a discovery I made just a couple weekends ago. So it was really cool.
I think it's so true too, Vero, that like our strength comes from them, and we may not realize it. Like our courage comes from them. Like I've said this on the podcast. My mom will call me crazy, and she'll say that I'm different, and she'll say she doesn't say it anymore as much, but she would always often criticize my way of being, and I always thought like what she's calling crazy, I think is courageous, and I think I get it from her. I always felt like I do things that she did. They're just in my way, and so studying abroad is actually a very safe way to travel. My mom left her country to a new country where she doesn't know the language to make money, to raise kids. Like, that takes crazy courage. It's not being crazy, so like I do the exact same things my mom did. Like, my mom will talk to anybody because she's not embarrassed to be like, I don't know the directions, I don't know how to spell it, I don't know how to write it. I have so much willingness to be embarrassed, but I will ask. And my mom had that. My mom's like, no me importa el que boca tiene Roma llega. I've said that on the podcast. Like, she will ask anyone anything, and if it makes her look stupid, oh well, because I need the answer and I don't know how else to find it. I don't know. I need to ask for help. And I love that about my mom. And like, I will too. Like, I will ask anything of anyone, and yeah, maybe it's like, I don't get that. And I'll say like, I don't really even know how that works. Can you tell me whether, can you teach me? Can you blah, 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 blah. Like, my mom had that, like, just that confidence. And I want to say that's like the tip of the day. Like, your parents will judge in you what is them. It irks them about them. And sometimes those things are actually good. They're good things. They see them in you, and they want to keep them safe, or keep you small to keep you safe. Like, they don't mean to discourage you from doing courageous things or crazy things, as they call them, right? Like, they don't mean to, but they would have done it, right? They out of necesidad. Sometimes out of necesidad, they were so courageous and so strong, and you don't have the same necesidad. Like, you don't have to do things where, say you want to travel to the Middle East, and being a woman is contentious there, and your parents are worried about you, but they had the same contentions. They dealt with machismo. They dealt with racism. Like, Mom, you did it too, and you actually did it under unsafe situations. I'm going to do this safely. You can't necessarily explain that to your parents. So the tip of the day is like, be like them, do what they did, do it in your way, and when they judge you, know that they don't have the words, and they may not even have the connection, but you're likely making them proud. You're likely making them proud deep down, and you're likely making yourself very proud, and you're likely more like them than you are different than them. And it's good for you to power through, and wherever you get the courage from, wherever you get the energy or the risk from, like, they may not get it. Thank them anyway, love them anyway, or just do it in silence anyway. That was a lot, but therapists will know exactly what I'm talking about.
I was going to say, like, awesome. It takes us back to that episode we had with Evelyn, right? Where we just recently, a couple episodes back, and we're like, how do we talk to our parents? And I think that many times it just has to be, como dijiste tú, a veces no le vamos a decir. But I think that our parents, they should hear that, in a sense of, like, in a good way, like praising, like, Mom, you see this in me, but maybe it seems bad, but I value it so much because it reminds me of you and how you were XYZ. And that's what me da el ánimo a mí para hacer eso. So I think it's beautiful. I think our parents didn't have their parents, right, to tell them, I'm proud of you. You're doing great work. You're doing amazing. And we got lucky to have our parents either like push us, and maybe not have the words to tell us that we're doing great. But now we can tell them, like, I like this about me because it reminds me of you. And I might do things differently because you have shown me that it's okay to be different and it's okay to do these things. So there's got to be a purpose, right? Have a purposeful conversation. You know, what is your...
The intention.
Con intention. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Andale.
So, but do you guys feel that who you feel that you align with is... everyone around you would kind of like be like, yeah, I could see that. Or more like, no, te pareces más a la tía tal que ya no la vemos, gracias a Dios, you know?
A mí me dicen que me parezco a mi tía Tete.
Ah.
You guys know mi tía Tete? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I could see that. Because she's, mi tía Tete is the oldest, and it's her and then my mom and then a bunch of other kids. But mi tía Tete is the oldest. I'm like, oh, I could see that. Like, they've always said that. In fact, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, they would tease me like, oh, es que tú eres hija de Esther, no eres hija de Cata, eres hija de Esther. I'm like, okay. Like, eres igual, hasta caminas igual que ella.
I think my family would agree that when I see, like, I'm a lot like my mom in lo corajudo and my sister, and then I'm a lot like my dad in lo, like, charismatic and wanting to be social. Like, that was something that definitely was my dad. My older siblings like to judge the younger ones a lot because we're more mal hablados and like we curse a lot more and stuff. And like I don't know what that's about. So the younger ones always get compared to like, man, y'all have like terrible mouths. But maybe it's just, that's a generational thing, I guess.
Definitely generational. I think I curse a lot more than my sister, but then we are 7 years apart. So todo eso. And my kids talk like my dad and my mom now. My kids, especially Archie. Archie is tillero. My mom calls him tillero because he'll go with the tía and the tíos. But he just likes old people. Remember I was telling you guys he gravitates towards the old people? And he saw my uncle come in with his tejana and all his botas. And he's like, eh. Archie just put his little hands on his hips, closed his little eyes, and hunched over and goes, compadre. You know? ¿Qué tío es usted? Like, kind of like that. Like, it's just so funny to me.
How cute.
But it was the cutest. He se sentó next to my tío, was there the whole time, and it was awesome. But I think with me, I even think that, yes, my siblings would to some rate agree that I'm very similar to my mom. But then I'm also a lot like my parent, like my dad. I'm a lot like my dad in the gritón. My mom is gritona. The gritón comes from my dad. So that is definitely me with the hijos de su chingada. Even though I'm not going to hit them. I just like chase them like my dad used to chase us, you know, to scare us. But other than that, I think that there's always a little truth in everything. So to wrap this one up, if you guys liked this conversation and want to keep it going, not in general, just not in particular the conversation about who we're like, but do like the fact that we're having these really cool, short, to the point topics of conversation for the summer series, send us over what you want us to discuss. It'll be short, brief, and we'd love to discuss it with you, for you, entre las tres. So you can always shoot us an email to admin@leveluplatina.com. You can find out about us and our services at leveluplatina.com, as well as our upcoming breakthrough brunch that is being hosted on September 30th. And we'll have a lot of details up on that website soon. And then you can always find us on our socials. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Level Up Latina, and then on the Twitter occasionally as Latina_up. So with no further ado, nos cuidamos, se cuidan, chicas, les mando un abrazo. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Se la lavan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Don't forget to level up.